Redditors who got engaged but it didn't last till the wedding. What happened? Together for 8 years, engaged for most of that. We were high school sweethearts. We were happy. Bought a house together but eventually just grew apart. It was an amicable breakup and we're still friends. It just became apparent that we wanted very different things in life. Your story actually makes me weirdly happy. Sometimes it's not horrific controlling behaviors or nasty cheating. Sometimes it's just not gonna work. Glad you're still friends. Dated for 6 years and finally proposed. It came to light that she had been talking to my soon-to-be best man and they fell in love. Losing 2 of the closest people in your life on the same day frickin' sucks, but it's not so bad now. She started hanging out with an old group of high school friends and just changed. She became extremely nasty over wedding plans, telling me we had to have the exact same number of guests on both sides. If I had one more guest than she did, she made me remove someone from my side. I knew if I moved forward it would have ended in divorce, so I just ended it before it got to that. He was cheating on me with a girl from his job. I helped him get a better job since he was making minimum wage at McDonald's before. He was also very immature and I realize now that him cheating on me was the best thing that could have happened. Hey, the same thing happened to me and it couldn't have turned out better. I'm glad you got out of a bad situation. Came home for lunch one day to surprise her. Surprise was on me as she was in the middle of fricking her coworker on my couch. I love that couch. That couch really tied the room together. Noticed a few signs she had anger issues before I popped the question, but ignored them. Waited 6 years for it to change and hopefully get better, all the while trying everything I could to help. Helped pay her college, let her move in, took her entire family to Hawaii, paid for counseling, etc. Then my dad died. Nothing hits you harder than knowing I didn't just waste my time, but I wasted his too. He'll never see his grandkids or be at my wedding or be there for all the things he should have been had I manned up and moved on when I knew things weren't going to work like he told me years ago. It's my biggest regret in life, but something I won't make again. I broke it off and I'm much happier now and looking for that special someone. TLDR. Don't expect someone to change no matter how much you love them. If you need something to change, give them a few months. If it doesn't change, move on. Your future self will thank you. Your dad would be proud, mate. Apparently once we got engaged he decided he had me on lockdown and started cheating in me with multiple women. Since we were only engaged everything was still in my name only. He had crap credit, so it was real easy to boot his butt out. She cheated and eventually chose him instead, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Went back to school, got a career, and met a wonderful person to spend my life with. Not to hop on, but that is exactly my story, too. I'd probably be living in some boony town in Indiana right now if it weren't for the fact she took off with some dude right after we graduated college. Early 30s now, went back to school for dental hygiene. Wife is a child therapist and all around badass. I'm super stoked I got cheated on. Got engaged to my pregnant girlfriend 4 months before the wedding. She calls it off saying she doesn't feel the love anymore. A week after that, I came home early from my second job to surprise her and see if we can work things out and found her in bed with a guy who would have been my best man. Turns out they've been shacking up for 6 months and she planned to leave me for him as soon as he broke things off with his wife, who was to be her maid of honor. I decided to speed up the process by telling his wife what I found, and instead of leaving her, the guy ditches my fiancé to try to salvage his marriage. My ex-fiancé and I kept disagreeing about stuff for the wedding. She comes from a wealthy family and I didn't have the money to have the type of wedding she wanted. My family offered to help out on some things and she agreed to give a little ground. I found out a week later that she and her mom had completely changed everything without telling me. Most of these changes I couldn't afford. When I confronted her about it, she asked me where I had heard that. I told her my sister had told me. She told me that I needed to choose between her and my family. It didn't take me but a few seconds to tell her that she could get all her crap put in the house as soon as possible. You dodged one, man. Sounds like a very materialistic and selfish woman. We got engaged without fully discussing what would happen after I graduated from college and we could stop being long distance. As it turns out, He was not much of a city guy, and I didn't want to move to the boonies and be a stay-at-home wife immediately after graduation. Whoops, it worked out for the best for both of us. From the day we started dating he knew I was planning to move to a city after graduation. I talked about it for 4 years. So I graduate, moved to the city, and it slowly dawns on him that I was serious. It took him a couple months to admit it, but he never had any desire to move to the city with me. He really thought it was a dream I would let go for him. Deep down, I knew I didn't want to marry her before I even proposed. We had a lot of problems, and I guess I was just hoping that proposing would fix them. It didn't, so I left. Nearly all divorcees I know have a variation of that line in common. Deep down, I knew way earlier that I shouldn't have married them and or broken up sooner. I'm in my 30s and seeing my friends divorce left and right, as well as couples staying together to try to make it work. From your reply, you made the right decision for sure. Phrase. First, he changed. Big time. He became controlling, jealous, and seemed to really expect that we'd reenact his parents' wildly dysfunctional marriage. Repeated long talks about it didn't change anything. There came a point where we were planning the wedding while I was realistically picturing myself as divorced in 5 years. That was stupid, and I ended it. We're both married to other people for over 25 years now, but he was bitter and mean the last time we ran into each other. I dodged such a bullet. He was bitter and mean the last time we ran into each other. LOL. Maybe I'm a bad person, but there's fun in knowing that they still give a crap long after you don't. Here's a different spin on things. I currently am engaged for about 1.5 years. Things have been good until recently. Lately she has been worried about if things don't work out. Specifically if she falls out of love with me and swoons for someone else. She's genuinely worried that someone else will sweep her off her feet. She feels that our spark isn't what it used to be and we aren't as romantic. She misses how it felt when she was single and she's a little torn over the fact that I could possibly be her last BF and she won't get to try anything else. This is all her words. She pushed me to propose sooner so I did, knowing I'd be happy to do so. But all these problems she's suddenly having. It hurts. She texted a guy at work in a flirty way about a month ago. She told me because she felt guilty. But how am I supposed to handle this? We've had several talks about how we can fix it. We took a 2-day break from each other, but nothing is changing. She's crying daily because she doesn't want to hurt me. Honestly, it seems like she wants to break up but is too scared to say it. One of my friends got engaged and her fiance became really controlling about the wedding. They fell in love with the venue but the only date available was in like 4 months. My friend wanted to think it over because she wanted to see if her family and bridal party was even available on that specific day. He proceeded to go behind her back, pay the deposit to hold the date without telling her, and then demanding her parents pay for the rest of the bill. Thank God she finally ended it. He started reading the Bible and believed he was the second coming of Jesus Christ. Not joking. He was a pilot in the Air Force and doing a bunch of training. He proposed before he left for officer training. Since we weren't married I couldn't go with him, and he wanted to wait to live together till marriage. We set the first wedding date for Christmas weekend of that year and he asked to postpone it. We set the next date for Thanksgiving weekend of the following year while he would be in pilot school for 1.5 years. He asked to postpone that one too, not because of training, but because he wasn't ready to get married yet. We set the third wedding date for after his training ended. 3 months before the wedding. My dress bought. My bridesmaids' dresses bought. Stuff booked. Save the date sent. Ect. He asks to push it back again. He wanted to just keep us being engaged. But he was going to be moving to the next base in a few months and would be deploying regularly. In order to stay together without being married and see him I would have had to literally drop everything, call out of work, and drive 6 hours whenever he would happen to be stateside for a few days between missions. It would have been impossible. We had been together for 5 years at this point, and I figured if he still wasn't ready to marry me by then, he never would be, so I gave him the ring back. I had hoped it would scare him and that he would not want to lose me, but he didn't care much. When we broke up I was visiting him halfway across the country and had 2 days left until my flight home. It's so awkward. He didn't tell anyone what happened. Any of our friends who asked he would just ghost. He didn't cancel the DJ or anything like that. He made me do everything. I have never had anyone want to buy my old dress, so I stuck with that too. 2 years later he, a 30-year-old man, was engaged to a 17-year-old he met through his church at his next base. Bullet dodged. All these years later I realized he never loved me. He loved the attention, love, and support I gave him. He needed a constant ego strike and I gave it to him. The man I wound up marrying is 10,000% more of a real man. Not me. My buddy got engaged to the girl he had been living with. She stopped taking her BC and told him she wanted to be pregnant for their wedding. Caused a bunch of fights over him not loving her because he didn't want to get her pregnant before the wedding. He eventually recognized her crazy and called it off the Sunday before the wedding, and then remained dating her for 6 more months until she signed a new apartment lease and signed his name to that lease without him agreeing to it. But we talked about it, she said. Was finally the last straw for him to get out of there. He is still dealing with some bad debt credit after learning post breakup that she got a credit card in his name without telling him and was using that to pay her half of the bills since he had called off the wedding but before they actually broke up. Holy crap, those red flags are no joke. We went to the same college and started dating early freshman year, but it turns out she was HS senior. So my second year she went away to a very prestigious all-girls school on the East Coast. Almost immediately she starts in about marriage and me dropping out and living near her. I stall on this since she is 18 without much relationship experience. I was 20 and had several year-long relationships at that point, but she sticks on it. So we get engaged right before finals when I went to visit. She is so happy. During her finals she goes and sees this wealthy powerful politician from Europe give a speech. He kind of hits on her and says his son is looking for an American wife. She says she is engaged, but agrees to have lunch with the son after checking with me so she can play matchmaker for her friends. A few days later she suddenly goes from being super clingy and calling me several times a day to being hard to get a hold of. On my birthday she doesn't call and I figure my worst fears are true. We talk towards the end of the day and she has been flown to the Caribbean one weekend and back to her formal ball in Europe, etc. I truly believe she was 100% in love with me just a few weeks before. Part of me doesn't blame her and part of me thinks that she is a selfish snake. Anyway, they got married. He was on horseback with a sword and everything. I had some fun in the meantime and met a much better woman 7 years later. We have now been married for 8 years. I think in the end it was for the best for everyone, though it has reinforced my already paranoid fear of people leaving me. That was a roller coaster from start to finish. I'm on mobile, so please excuse any mistakes. I was 17. He was 18. He joined the military. I waited. Things were turbulent. You see, he was my ex's best friend at first. I won't go into details, but he directly caused the breakup and subsequently showered me with affection. Reed stalked me into submission. We were together a year. Christmas came. He proposed. Then he threw me into a door when I didn't want to hang out with his friends. I stayed. I got pregnant. He went back to the military. I have some mental health issues. I stressed and lost the baby. Then one day I got a phone call. You are a disgusting cheating W. I'm turning off your phone. I'm keeping your ring. It was being resized. Never contact me again. It was 2 days before I was to fly to him to get married. I was distraught. Cried for 3 days. Didn't eat for a week. It was bad. I eventually moved on and got over it. Years later we reconnected. Saw pictures of his child. She was born 4 months after we broke up. She's the same age as ours would have been. He spat at me if you hadn't gotten the abortion. I miscarried. Haven't spoken much to him since, except every few years. When he's down, he gets a hold of me. Asks to have that one last hookup he feels he deserves. He's a giant piece of crap and a redditor. I hope you read this. And I hope you know I won't keep your secrets anymore. What a garbage human. We decided to cancel the wedding after her daughter died at the age of 7. We're still together, but we just never rescheduled the wedding. Now, years later, we've actually decided not to marry, although we did throw a big party for family and friends at our 10-year anniversary. I'm so sorry for your loss, but if just being together works for you, then do it. It's your life. was with my SO for 3 years before we got engaged. While we were engaged we had our son, unplanned, and it pushed back plans for the wedding because of money troubles. Her father then was diagnosed with terminal cancer and she started to withdraw from me after finding out the news. I tried to be supportive and help her through it, but we started arguing about small things constantly. Molehills started to become mountains and we started to fall apart. Not long after our 4-year anniversary she got the news her father had passed away, on Valentine's Day no less. In our 5th year of being together and after a fairly large argument, I left work and grabbed a bottle of wine with flowers to try to signify a new beginning for us. But when I got home she had taken my son and all his things, and moved all of her belongings out of the house. She had left the engagement ring on the bed for me to find. I never did get an explanation, only that she didn't feel love between us anymore. I never felt that way, but perhaps I missed something that she was trying to tell me. Who knows? Now I see my son 3-4 days a week, have a friendly relationship with my ex, and have moved on as best I can. I still love her, a part of me always will, but I'm fairly certain we will never reconnect as much as I would love to try again. Sometimes you just have to accept what happened and push on. I was working in the retention department of DSL company and they changed gears and closed that department at this particular call center. After the change to taking inbound calls, I started hating myself. I went from having the power to help customers, the majority of whom were nice people just needing to get a discount reapplied or genuinely disconnect service due to various circumstances, to having to tell people that their bill doubling is supposed to be acceptable. Because of this, I decided to go back to school and work towards a better career. Fiancé was supportive of this idea. I took a part-time job at the school and focused on my studies. Life was great. Problem was, because of my major reduction in income, he was having to pay for his share of bills that I had previously been paying. He seemed to lose respect for me after this. A year later, we were arguing over everything and he was trying to guilt trip me for having the gall to try to get our bills paid on time. I just couldn't take it anymore. TLDR. I went back to school and crap fell apart. She was controlling, manipulative, and abusive. She was like this before we got engaged, but since it was my first relationship, I didn't know any better. She got worse after the engagement. I wasn't allowed to have any friends or access the internet. I couldn't watch TV, go to movies, or read any books without her permission first. She had to know where I was every moment of the day. As far as she was concerned, my sole reason for existence was to do whatever she wanted. One day, I got fed up with something she wanted me to do and told her no. She said that she couldn't marry me if I wasn't willing to do what she asked. She broke off the engagement a few days later. A few months later, she called me to try to get back together with me. She didn't think that the breakup would be permanent. She just thought that I would be so unhappy without her that I would go crawling back to her. We had broken up a couple of times before our engagement, and this was apparently her strategy those times as well. By this time, I recognized this as the manipulative tactic is was, so I refused to get back together with her. Looking back on it, I would have been miserable with her, so it was the best decision I could have made. She wants a slave, not a partner. She fell in love with my best friend. We went on a trip to visit him, and at the end of it I caught them making out in her car. They ended up getting married a few months later and had a child shortly thereafter. They just recently finalized their divorce. I ran into my old friend and met their kid. I asked what happened and he said, "Same thing as what happened to you, man. If they'll cheat with you, they'll cheat on you. If they'll cheat with you, they'll cheat on you." This cannot be said enough. It's so true. Not me, but my math teacher who got engaged with her fiance. Apparently he got a cardiac arrest while parking his car and she saw him die right in front of her eyes. He was gone in 3 minutes. It was a week before their wedding too. Please do pardon me if you see any water stains on your exam papers. It was probably my tears. I will never forget her forced smile as she said that to the class. Hope she's doing well now. He cheated on me the entire time we were engaged, but being young and dumb I looked the other way. Finally, one weekend he wanted to stay with his friends for a man getaway and on one of those nights he texted me and broke it off. Yes, I said texted. Came back to our apartment 4 days later and I don't remember all the details, but he moved some of his things out that day. Found out one of the girls he was cheating on me with had just gotten an apartment at the complex I lived at. He moved in with her and their apartment kitchen window faced my kitchen window. It was great. Eventually his best friend laid it all out and told me how long this had been going on and with how many girls. Really heartbreaking honestly. His best friend and I became good friends after this and one night he admitted that he had feelings for me the moment we met and knew my ex would leave me at some point because I was the third girl he had done this to. So, long story short, my ex married the girl he cheated on me with and eventually she left him for a woman, his best friend. We've been together for 7 years and we're getting married next spring and I couldn't have picked a better person to spend eternity with. Spent 5 years together, helped her through some self-harming and suicidal tendencies, was madly in love, proposed and she said yes. Then 2 weeks or so before the wedding I got off work early one day and wanted to surprise her. Walked in on her fricking some dude in the bed I bought for us. Didn't even give me the ring back. Proposed in July '09. My daughter was born in October that year and she left me in November when I asked her to stop texting this guy while we were out eating dinner for the first time since my little girl was born. Apparently this made me an overbearing control freak. 4 days later she broke up with me via voicemail and told me I'll never see my daughter again. I really hope you fought her on the whole seeing your daughter thing. That's just horrible. She cheated on me with a double-digit amount of guys and girls apparently. She had an orgy with minors and fricked her own cousin, just to name a few people. The red flags weren't there and I found out only because her family ratted her out. She took weeks to fess up but later admitted to everything in detail. She cheated on you with not just the men, but the women and the children too. Not me but 2 of my co-workers got engaged, made a big deal out of it, started fighting about every detail of everything and broke it off. 5 years later they quietly got engaged again and had a small wedding. Happily married 10 years later. Honestly, that sounds like they learned a valuable lesson about what really matters and it stuck. This is nice. She said yes, and then started getting further and further away from me. Started to go out drinking with her friends, quit her job, stopped talking to me honestly about her feelings, would get really upset with me when I tried to talk with her about what was going on. She left me in the middle of my hardest semester and left me heartbroken. I climbed out of that hole, pushed through and did really well that semester. Then I met another girl at college and started to fall for her, and who should try to come back into my life but the one who left me. She told me she couldn't believe I got over her so fast after almost 5 years, and that I was just using another woman to hide my pain etc. And that I actually still loved her. Yeah, she was wrong. Through the gauntlet I went through I determined that I did not at all deserve to be unhappy. I treated her amazing for the entirety of our relationship and if she didn't know what she had when she had it, she didn't deserve it. So I moved on. I left her behind with no regrets. I'm now in a relationship with a new girl I met and extremely happy. Been almost 2 years. I'm guessing some people are going through this right now. My advice is this. Life is going to move on. It's going to be hard and terrible but you have got to push through and come out stronger on the other side. As sad and as wrong as it sounds, there are other people who will love you better and right. Maybe you've made some mistakes and that's why things didn't work out. Maybe you didn't and the problem rested elsewhere. Regardless, you need to gather yourself and work towards making yourself happy. You deserve happiness. Your worth and happiness are not defined by a person. They're defined by yourself. Go out and make yourself happy. You can do it. Cheers mate, that was some nice advice to read. GF of 4 years recently cheated on me and we broke up. I've basically just been going out with friends, going to the gym and trying not to think about it too much. Nice to be reminded that we're all entitled to be happy though. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.